זה שיר פשוט, זה שיר קצר, אולי נשמע טיפה מוזר, אבל תדע, כי זו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך, והוא רואה, והוא שומע.
We're going live. We're live. Yes, we have a powerful portion today. For me, it kind of hit me between the eyes. We've got a double whammy for you today. We're going to try to squeeze as much in as we possibly can. We are at the end of the book of Numbers, Bamidbar. Can you believe it? I always am shocked when we get to the end, and then we're going to hit Deuteronomy, and before we know it, we're going to be starting over again. So blessings to all of you. Hi, I'm Charlie Brown, and I am excited to be with you. You kind of probably have seen down here, we have our registration is now open. Our free homeschool conference, Raise Them Up, is up. It's ready. It is, you can register right now. I'm very excited about it. It is July the 30th will be the day of the event, but registration's open. But wait, if you can't make it to the conference all day long, it is being recorded. So yay. And we're doing something new. When you go in there, you'll see the recording options that we have available for you. So don't worry about, oh my gosh, this is gonna be so expensive. I promise you it's not. It's going to be great for you. And gosh, there's going to be women just like you, who are committed to homeschooling and all that entails, supporting you. You are the woman for the job. I think you have been called to this. There's a purpose for this. I know it's exhausting. I know it's hard. And so I want to encourage all of you homeschoolers out there, or if you're thinking about homeschooling, or please come and at the very end, we have a live Q&A. So we love hearing from you, love getting your questions. I would also, you know what, I'm going to turn my chat, make sure I have my chat on. Let me know, those of you who are watching live, say hi to me so I can say hi back. And let me know if you can hear me okay. So this is powerful. You know, for me, we are in Mattot and Massei. Okay, these are two Torah portions squeezed together. We're going to start it. Whoa, I already squeezed ahead. We're going to start at Numbers 30. So if you're grab your Bible, grab your Bible, go to Numbers 30. Can you follow along with me if you're doing it on a phone? I love like touch and holding, writing in the word. I love having that. But these are powerful portions. I'm going to say this 100 times because for me, the big theme for me, it's always identity, right? Ruth Camargo, when you hear this, you're going to be like, yes, it's always about identity. It's always about identity. And to me, I just kept hearing, what are you settling for? So we'll come back around to that. Big drink. And, you know, thinking about, are you walking away from the fullness of what you are created to be and to have? And we're going to come back around to that. We'll get to that really quickly. So there's so much jam. So stay with me to the end. I promise there's going to be a lot in here that you're going to want to hear so we can fit in as much as we can today. And, you know, would you take a minute if you're watching live, if you're on YouTube, would you share this right now? Would you just hit share, copy it and share? Would you invite a friend? And would you say hi? Would you say hi to me so that I just can know that you were here? Maybe even sneak in a takeaway. It just really means a lot to me. It means the world. I appreciate you. Okay. So the other thing is, how many of you will be with me, will be with us, will be one of us at Surge? I want to know who's coming to the Surge Women's Conference in Texas. We're going to be in, I can't even know if I can say it. I have to look at the word again. Waxahachie, Texas, which is just outside of Dallas. There is still some available spaces there. They're doing even an extra little section for your teenagers, your young girls. So if you have young girls, bring them. Sadly, sorry guys, this is not for you. It's just for the girls. So Women's Conference Surge, go. You can Google Surge Messianic Women's Conference. It'll pop up and you can go and check it out. I think I know that I've posted it on all my places, so the link is in there to go register, but go get in there and register because I don't want you to miss out. That's the most important thing. It's closing out. They're finalizing everything. It's going to be amazing. I get to speak on Friday night, and then I'm doing a couple workshops. I'll do one on how to study the Bible. I'm going to do one, of course, on control. So we're going to talk about that control issues that we struggle with. And then I'm doing the Friday night session that I'm doing for everyone is Say Yes to the Dress. It's going to be talking about Yeshua's return and then preparing the bride. And so I'm excited for that. So let's get back to it. Here we go. This is, we start out with this whole section about nullifying and keeping vows. I would recommend spend some time like looking into that. What does that mean? Is this like, oh my gosh, women, yeah, you have to have a man to validate you because you can't say a vow by yourself? No, that's not it. I mean, if you look at the widows, the women who are not married and who are divorced or widowed, they stood on their own. Their vows stood on their own. What he's saying is that there's an extra level of protection. And I feel like this for me this year, I was really seeing the way that my father protects me, my bridegroom protects me, so that I want to always know that my yes means yes and my no means no. But even as a man, if I were a man, I still have my father is protecting me. There's still a covering, and we want to be careful that our vows are just how important it was that, again, our yes means yes, our no means no. We do a lot of swearing, like, oh, I swear that's the truth, or just be asking, maybe just take a minute and say, what is a vow to you, Father? Where do I need to be careful with my mouth? Where do I need to be careful? You know, my prayer time this morning, I asked God, I said, would you put like a watch on my tongue so that it would be like what you did for Balaam, even when I wanted to say something that was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs or was negative or maybe a vow I shouldn't take? Would you change it and instead it would become a blessing? If I want to say something that maybe is a curse or limiting, is ugly, not pleasing, not a good representation of who you are, would you change the words and they would just come out of my mouth so that I giggle? I would giggle knowing that you just did that and not even let me say the things. Would you just put a stop? Because I mean, hey, he's not a respecter of persons. If he did that for the prophet Balaam, when he was trying to curse Israel, of course he would do it for me. Even more so, I think I'm his favorite. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I prayed that today, like, Father, just change the words in my mouth so they would come out that way. So, okay. So God's saying, okay, next we move on and God is saying, okay, so I need you to fight the Midianites. So now remember, speaking of Balaam and Balak, remember, here they are up on the mountains trying to curse them, and then they send the women down. Remember what happened? They send the women down to entice them to now, weaken them up and get them to start serving their gods, serving the way that they serve. And God's finally saying, I want you to mobilize and carry out God's vengeance against I want my vengeance against Midian. So they didn't even know. Remember, meanwhile, back at the camp, they're just doing their own thing. And they didn't even realize what was going up on the mountaintops. And now they're finding out this, hey, I need you to go up now and you're going to annihilate these people. And so they sent 12,000 men to battle. It tells you 1,000 from every tribe. 12,000 men went to battle. And Phinehas goes as well with the articles. I mean, because he's already shown, right? He's like not okay with the whole Midianite practices. He's already shown his zeal. He's already shown he's the man for the job. He gets to go. And he takes, it says articles and a trumpet or shofar, right? He takes that with him. And they go in, kill the Midianites. They kill the kings. It mentions that. And if you haven't noticed on there, guess who else gets killed in this battle? Balaam. He gets killed. You know what? He was still there, apparently. He hadn't left. He went, he hung out. He's hanging around. He's not disassociated. I mean, even though he knows God is not with them, he's still sticking around because they're a meal ticket for him. He's still sticking around. He got paid by them. Now he's like hanging out. He's not disassociating himself. He was given a chance, and then he paid the price that they did. He could have left. Took his trusty donkey, and he could have left. He could have got on his donkey and headed back to his house, and he could have, disassociated from them, but instead it looks like he's still there and he gets killed along with them. He could have moved out of Dodge, but he didn't. He's still so for me, this is another thing, is that it's not that we are who we hang around. I mean, weren't you told that by your mom? You are who you hang around. You're judged by the company you keep. And here's an example. We saw that with the men hanging out with these women. What happened? These men that were hanging out with the Midianite women, all of a sudden they start worshiping the gods that they did, serving the gods the way that they did. It's not that you can't be around people ever. I mean, if you look at Peter with Cornelius, he's given this vision, right? And he's told it's okay to be around people because he was taught not to associate or touch or go into the house of a Gentile, anyone who wasn't Jewish, right? Anyone not Israeli or whatever. So anyways, but he was given this vision. And can I just reinforce to you, all of you who are listening, I don't care who you are, where you're listening from, take a minute, go back to Acts. What is it? Acts 10. I want you to go back and read it. It's not about food. He goes through the vision 3 times. It's given to him, he's told it, and then you go back. I think in 11, he restates it to everyone and says, oh yeah, by the way, yeah, of course I went to Cornelius. Why? Because God told me it was okay for me to associate with him, because he gave me this vision. He was showing me it was a vision about people, not about food. No different than when God gave Joseph visions. They were about cows and wheat, and it represented people. He was giving them visions, not about food. When he said all things are clean, he wasn't talking about food. He was talking about people. Go back and read it from that perspective. It needs to be your revelation. Go back and reread it. But if you're using that as your stand, I'm just going to eat what I want to eat, and you're just a diehard about that, would you just take a minute and would you just read that? I mean, no judgment. I promise everybody, we're all on our journey. I just want to say, if that's what you're using as the nail, to hold in your doctrine on this, would you go back in and reread it? Take a breath, different perspective. Okay. So back to this. What I'm saying is we can still hang around people. We can be around people, but it's who do we just hang out with? Who are you spending our time with? We've talked about this a couple times, right? So remember, they go out to war. They're told to annihilate these people. And instead, what do? They bring back the women and they bring back the children. Hello, did we forget what was going on with the women? And they had to be reminded. Do you remember? There's a reason that I wanted you to not bring the women with you. There was a reason. What's the reason? It was because, do we remember the whole spear that whole spear incident in front of the tabernacle? But they brought back women and children. Wasn't okay. And God says, I want you to kill them. Remember the plague? We don't want to bring that into the camp again. You need to kill them. This was protection. It was grace and protection. This wasn't God being mean. He was like, I know this temptation is going to be more than you can handle. Let me remind you of what happened before. And I don't want you to bring that into the promise where I'm going to take you. Where you're about to go, you can't bring that with you. Death is not the end all. Remember, we think of death as like, oh, it's the worst thing. We just have to trust God. We have to trust the process. We have to trust the story. And then he tells all of these soldiers that I want you to spend a week outside the camp. You're going to spend a week outside there. I want you to purify yourselves and your captives and the spoils. All need to be purified before they can come back into the camp. You need to just wash the remnants of war off of you. I don't want you to bring that into camp. Get it all out of your system. You've got a week. Get that out of your system and then come back into the camp. I don't want you to bring it into the camp. What if, I'm going to grab a different drink. What if after soldiers are sent on deployment and they're at war in combat, what if we let soldiers rest for 7 days and they have a process of being able to cleanse themselves of all that they're hearing, all that they went through. They get to cleanse themselves. They get to decompress. They get to wash off the residue of combat. What if, I'm curious, I wonder what the rates of health, what about PTSD? I wonder if the process of doing that was a way of healing. In this case, it was just men that went to combat, but it was a way of healing their minds, a way of reconstituting themselves to be able to step back into the regular community and then to the approach system to the king. If you go to 31 verse 23, anything that can pass through the fire, it needs to do that. And then all the other things like your clothes and everything else, if it's going to get burned up in the fire, then it needs to go through water and get washed. Again, we need to get rid of all the residue. None of it can come in his presence. He's saying, I don't want any of that in my presence. And I'm thinking about, us being the bride without spot or wrinkle. We have to pass through the fire. We're cleansed with the water because none of that can come into his presence. And I also love about this part is that actually they divided the spoils up as well with the Levites. Even the people. It said, and remember, they had to kill if they brought boys and they brought mom, because boys grow up to be men. And they have that all. And if they have, the only thing that they were allowed to keep as far as people were girls who had not yet been with a man. So they had to be young girls and they would be converted, right? They would convert. They would now become part of the people. And those girls that would have been brought in would have been divided up even amongst the Levites. It says, and the people, even the people, the spoils and the people, all of it got divided. So even the Levites were able to, because they weren't able to go out and fight, but they were actually, and they were there working in the tabernacle, they still get part of the spoils. I think that's cool. I think that it was very specific on the percentages that went to God and went to the Levites. And then in verse 49 is one of my favorites. It says in verse 49, if you look at, where are we at? Scooching. Oh, 49, 31, 49. They are told, I want you to, the commanders come back. They come back to Moses and they say, hey, we counted all the men and not one was missing. We counted all the men. We were sent out because he was with us. Not one was missing. Isn't that cool? They were sent out to battle and not one man died. They annihilated the Midianite kingdom and not one in the kings, and they didn't lose one man. I feel like that would just reinforce their identity. Like I tell you every week, sit in these portions and think, imagine if I were a part of standing around there, said, hey, okay, everybody, all the men soldiers come in, my team, gather around, we need to count everybody. And then you're expecting that somebody's got to be missing. And you're like counting and you're like, oh, what? And you get to the end and there's none missing. How would that make you feel? For me, I was like, oh, I would just feel like, as a leader, knowing that my team just rocked it and that God had protected my team. I don't know, that just blesses me every year when I read that. Not one is missing. And then it says that the commanders, this is just fun fact, the commanders brought in 16,750 shekels worth of gold. That's what they bring in to the that's the tabernacle part, the part to God. This is the amount. So I have to dig in and do some, what does that mean? What is that worth? And remember, it's not about the money here. It's the shekel. We're talking about the weight of the gold. Okay. So that's how I calculated this, is by the weight. So the weight of a shekel is about 0.31 to 0.32 ounces. Random fact, you can now win on Jeopardy. Today, the price of gold is $1,935.53. That's today's date, and we're on July 12th at the airing of the live recording of this. That is the price of gold. So we're talking today, over $100,000 was brought to the tabernacle. That was God's portion that they were bringing to the tabernacle. But wait, what would the equivalent? That's $100,000. What would the equivalent of that be in biblical times? Because to us, it's worth $100,000, but in biblical times, it's like $3 million. It's crazy. It was a lot. There was a lot. So the bottom line is there was a lot. There was a lot of gold. They had a lot of plunder. It was a big score for them to have all of this now to go into the promised land. I feel like, again, I'm imagining they're all sitting around. They're all waiting to cross. This is happening. We're about to go in. We're about this happen. I don't know if they knew. I don't think they know yet. Okay, we're leaving. We're going in, but they can see what's happening because pretty soon we're going to see Reuben and Gad and half the tribe of Manasseh. They have to know we're leaving because they make different decisions, right? So we know that they're going to know really quickly, if not now. And they're sitting there, and they haven't lost anyone. They're high off of this battle. They have all this plunder. I mean, this is pretty cool. That's a really great way to go into the promise. And then we're told also here they have flocks. They have herds now. We are hearing about this. And Reuben and Gad, as I mentioned, and then half the tribe of Manasseh, they strike a deal to stay out of the land that is the east side, because they look around and they say, I think this is better. This is going to be better for us with all of our flocks and everything. And this is going to be better for our herds. And we're going to stay in this area. And I spent a lot of time in this year. They settled. I feel like they settled. That's what I just kept feeling, is they settled. They looked around, and instead of going into the promised land, going into this place where God had promised, going where they knew God was going, let's look about the tabernacle. And the tabernacle will be going into the land, will be going with the people. And they're saying, I'm going to stay here, which means they're going to stay without the presence of God with them. They're not going to have that with them. And this is where we're going to stay. And I really feel like they settled. They settled. We're going to come back to how do we settle, right? In Joshua 19 and 20, we see them being dismissed from the tents, meaning like they go through the part of the deal is they say, we'll go with you. We're going to leave our kids, our herds. We're going to build some cities real quick and or take over some cities and rename them, or build some and build things for our sheep. And we're going to leave our families here, but we'll go with you. The men will go with you, and we will fight and go through the land. And we will stay with you until every tribe has their inheritance. We'll help everybody get their inheritance, but this is what we want to have. And it's interesting because I was thinking of in Genesis 3, or we see in Genesis 3, Reuben is told by his father, right? Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. Unstable as water, you shall not excel, because you went up to your father's bed and then you defiled it. I feel like they're like, he's all these amazing things. He has all these things going, but he settles, but he wants what he wants right now. And he submits to his fleshly desires. And he takes along Gad and half the tribe of Manasseh with him. It's that I want what I want, and I want it now. Sad thing is now they're vulnerable. They're vulnerable to attacks because God's not with them. They're vulnerable to attacks. We see later, we can look up in like 2 Kings. We see that the king of Assyria, they get taken captive to what's known then as Nineveh. They get put in, and they miss that whole mark. They miss that everything that was that could have been promised to them, that was promised to them. Okay, so this is the practical portion. What have I settled for? What do I say? Oh, I'll help everybody else get what they need, even though I know what is my inheritance. I know what the word says. I know what it says. I know what it says, who I am. I know what it says, what he promises for me, life, abundant life. He promises me health. He promises me so many years. He promises me all these things. If I, then he, right? We know that if I, then he rules. We know the blessings that come along with when I walk in his statutes, when I walk in his ways. I understand the blessings that come upon me and my children and my children's children. Because see, remember, the decision that they made didn't just affect them. It affected generations. Our decisions are generational. They said, I'm going to stay right here. And sadly, then that meant their children, their children's children, their children shall end up in captivity because of their decision to not stay where they would be protected, where they would be with the presence of God, where they would fight with his presence guiding and leading them. So it affects generations. So me, where am I at on this? I know what he says. I know, again, all the blessings. I know, but what decisions have my ancestors, 2 generations, 1 generation before me, where have they compromised and say, let everyone else, that might work for everyone else, but it's too hard. I'm going to stay here. This looks nice and easy. How has that affected me now? Because one of my ancestors made those choices. And where I see that happening in my life is probably in my health. I can see where I watched them eat certain ways or not exercise, or how their lifestyle was, or how they chose to grow or learn or move ahead in life, how they chose to handle money. All of those things, right? I'm going to do it the easy way, or what satisfies my flesh right now, but I don't realize that I'm not setting up an inheritance for generations to come because I've squandered away finances. That happened, could that have happened generations before you? But what we get to do now is stop that. We can say, okay, wait a minute. I don't want to be like Reuben and Gad and half the tribe of Manasseh. I want to step into the promise. I want to go over with Joshua and Caleb and saying, yes, I'm going to take. This looks easier. I'm tired. I might feel too old right now. I might feel whatever. But you know what? I'm going to step into what he's promised me. I'm going to step into that mentally. I am not going to just spiritually, emotionally, physically. That's what I want to do. I don't want to expose my other generations to the danger of trying to do it my own way and try to do it against what I know God has said, what I know that he's called me to. Also, we know that their actions would be interrupted as they were too afraid of the Canaanites to go in and cause others to be scared and not go. And let me explain what I mean by that. Think about their actions. Them saying, one of the concerns Moses had is that if you go, people could perceive. If you stay here, people are going to perceive. That's why they struck the deal. They're going to perceive that you're too afraid of the Canaanites. And so instead, you're going to stay here and they're going to push. We're going to go over there. And they see you as strong and they're going to be concerned. And I think that's worth talking about for a second. How do my actions affect my community? Because every single one of us, including myself, every one of us, we are a mentor to someone. Someone is watching you. Someone is learning how to do things because they're watching you. Because more is caught than taught. They're watching you. And maybe some of your actions, my actions, may be perceived that I'm too, because that might be too scary. That might be, I'm too afraid to try that. And if I step out into this calling, if I step out into what he's called me to, if I'm not operating at the level that he's called me to, what am I telling other people? What am I telling my children and grandchildren? What am I telling those that are watching me? Am I saying to them that it's too scary? You shouldn't try either. You should hold it back. Because you are mentoring and people are watching. How do they interpret your actions? How are they interpreting my actions? And these are things that I just sat and thought, wow, I want to pray more and be on this. Father, I don't want my mindset of lack or poverty mentality or whatever maybe has been passed through my generations or that I've started myself to say, I don't want any of that to keep someone else from this because I think it's too scary for me. I don't want someone else to be held back. I don't want anyone else to think that the enemies are so big that we better hang back and not walk in my calling. Because look, Charlie's not doing it. And if she's not, I noticed her not doing it. And if anybody could do it, she could do it. So I'm not going to do it either. I don't want to be that person. I want to be the person that inspires you. And I want you to be the person that inspires others, that they see you doing and they say, if you can do it, then I can do it. One of the examples I have, and I'm sure I had it somewhere on my notes or maybe not, but I have a friend, her name is Linda. And I was talking to her yesterday on the phone and she was telling me she just turned 60 this year and she's really excited about it and she's loud and proud about it. And I love that. This is who I am. This is how old I am. And I love that about her. And she is at her best health that she's ever been. She has gotten herself fit. She's chosen to be strong at a weight that's fit and strong for her age because she's like, I want to be fit. I want to be strong. I want to be a good example to my family. And she was telling me about how where she lives in San Clemente. So if anyone lives there in California, everyone jumps off the bridge there. It's a big thing. People jump off the bridge. Well, the problem is she doesn't swim well. She'll laugh and say, well, I cannot drown, right? I'm just good at not drowning, meaning I can get myself to, you guys get it. But so what she's doing is she's practicing swimming. She's practicing swimming because she doesn't just want to jump. She wants to jump off the bridge. She's like, I live here. I want to do all the things and inspire people no matter what age. We're going to do the things. So she realizes I could jump off the bridge. The problem though, then I have to swim, but they do have little boats that will pick people up. She's like, no, our scooter things, ski-doos or whatever they call it, sea-doo. I want to swim to the shore. I want to swim after I jump. I want to be able to swim then to the shore. So she's been practicing swimming and taking swimming lessons because she's like, I want to show that I can do it, not for herself, because she wants others to be inspired. This is what you two can do. And that was so inspiring to me. I got a quick comment. Here we go. Hey, Jen, love you. So we're going to hop up to chapter 33. Everyone switch your Bibles. Get it? You got it? Get it? Got it? Hold it up and down. Here's your workout. Okay. Chapter 33. Massei. Okay. Say that however you want. So we get a rundown here of the journey and we're going to go. It says they go from stage to stage. We get like a peek into the captain's log. Moses, captain's log, day 1. And he literally starts with day 1. And we were let out of Ramesses on the 15th day of the first month. Okay, so there's their captain's log. We start right away. Notice that even in Acts, or that includes Stephen and his testifying, they start at the beginning of the journey. Peter walks through the journey. We are told to zakar, to remember. Zakar isn't like, oh, I forgot. I was going to remember. Zakar means to take it somewhere where it's filed away. If you're like me, things get placed and they're not in the front of you. So out of sight, out of mind. So you need to zakar, which means bring it back to the front. Bring it back to that place of remembrance. Bring it back to the place where you're like, oh yeah, this is important. And the reason you go through the journey, the reason they bring it back to the journey is to zakar, to bring it back and go, oh yeah, this is important. Remember the journey. People overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony. That's what Revelations 12:1 says. And then the last part of that verse says, and they loved not their lives unto death. It was so not about them. It was about, I need you to know that if I can do it, you can do it. If my ancestors can do it, you can do it. I'm going to talk to my girls out there. We stand on the shoulders of some women who have fought for us to be able to do cool things like read, cool things like have a checking account or buy a house. We've vote. We stand on the shoulders of women. What are you doing for the next women to stand on your shoulders? Because we got to keep lifting each other up in your faith. How are you walking as a leader to show? Are they seeing that by the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony? And what is your testimony? How often do you tell your story? How often do you tell the story? Just at Passover? Is that the only time we talk about it? Let's talk about the journey. You know, the word says that we're supposed to teach it to our children coming and going. As we're walking, as we're talking, you know, I've been doing this a lot in the car with my granddaughters. We're in the car and I start talking about, you'd be shocked what they can figure it out. I was talking a lot about the Zelophehad's daughters and like, girls, this is it. When it's something you need to stand up for, you need to stand up for it. But it has to be because it's the right thing for not you, but for generations, for what God wants in their lives. And you fight for what God wants in other people's lives. You fight for the inheritance. You fight for the promises. That's what these women were doing. It wasn't like, oh, I just need some land. It's not fair. That's not what it was about. But are you teaching the things to your children, coming and going, walking and talking? When you're talking with your friends, it's so exciting to me to have friends that I love. If my friends are all reading the portions with me, because I know that I could call multiple people, text and be like, girl, did you read about this? Why did that hit me between the eyes this year different? And I know they're reading the same part. I love that. That's what I love about how the word is broken into portions. And the reason we have the practical portion, yes, it was a great thing that came out of the Babylonian captivity. It was amazing that they said, you know what? This is never going to happen again. So let's divide up the Torah into portions and we're going to all read it at the same time so that we never let it die. Never let it die. Never let the story die. I want you shouting from the rooftop, look what the Lord has done. How often are you telling the story? We get so caught up in learning so much. You know, in my book, I share my testimony a little bit here and there, but how often do I really share it? And how often I was convicted? Like, I'm not sitting there saying, well, you know, when they left Egypt and then they got to the place, they got to the waters and he parted the waters. And this was part of Stephen proclaiming the good news. It wasn't just that Jesus died on the cross and rose again and now he lives. It literally was, here's the story of our people. This is the promise. And then through the line of David, here comes the Messiah that's born. He's born of a virgin. We don't just tell the story at Christmas time. He's born of a virgin. He then grows and he becomes the man that we all get to walk things out because we have a mentor that we can look to. And then, which we're going to see why this is important today, he died so that I would be free. So that I can now go back to the garden and I can walk and talk and have eternal life with him. And he came back and he rose again and he's alive. That's what makes it different. And he fulfilled these prophecies. How often am I telling those stories? Do you know him? Do you know him? Do you know that Messiah? Do you know Jesus? Do you know Yeshua? Is he your personal savior? You're going to see why you need him to be your Kohen Gadol, your high priest. You need to know why he died for you. So, yeah. I love that he came to bring sight to the blind and set captives free. I love that he came to give life more abundantly. I love that he came so that I can walk in a peace, in a shalom, in the middle of chaos. He gave me a gift that the world can't give me. I love that I have that, but am I testifying that? Am I telling everyone, oh, I walk in shalom, everything is crashing around me, but the peace of God that transcends all understanding is guarding my heart and guarding in my mind. Why? Because I am blessed. I am thankful. And he told me if I'm thankful, he'll do that. And he's doing it. Is that my testimony? Or am I groaning and complaining and griping about what I don't have? So anyways, I'm thinking about this as Moses, as he's going through this story. I'm laughing because I'm thinking about him going through this and the kids all sitting around going, yeah. Are we there yet? Can we just go? I don't know why that hit me, but it made me laugh today. So can we just go on? Blah, blah, blah. I've heard the story. But they will know it so well that when they go to bed, they're going to think it's going to be rolling in their head. When they wake up, it's rolling in their head. When they're marching and walking, when they're discouraged, it's going to be that thing that rises up inside of them. When they go to Jericho and they're walking around those walls 7 times, they're going to remember the stories of the water parting. They're going to remember the stories of water coming when there was no water, and food when there was no food, and shoes lasting for 40 years. They're going to remember those stories and their faith will be encouraged. They're going to remember that they fought the Midianites, and guess what happened? They fought the Midianites and they didn't lose one person. And they got to bring back all the spoils. So this is just a one town, and we're going to trust. It's going to build this faith in them. And that's why we need to tell the story, because we need to know, oh yeah, Jonah was in the well and then he came out because he had to do this. We have to know the story so that when we are discouraged in our life, we can bring those back up. Again, you can do a study of all the places that they stopped at. That's always a fun one. Sit and write down all the names of every place they stopped at. Do a study, look up the names, see what they mean, and then see how is it similar to your journey. Where is it similar to your journey of where he's brought you? Like, oh, this meant bitter waters. So when I come to the places where things are hard to swallow, things are hard on me, then this is what, okay, gotcha. All right. So we're told then that, I'll keep moving. We only got a little bit of time. We got 2 portions. Here we go. We are told Aaron dies at 123. So to me today, it's the little details. This is the 40th year of their captivity. We're told that, and that he died at 123, which means that he left Egypt in his 80s, y'all. That's to say, girls, boys, it is not too late for you. He left Egypt in his 80s and he's now 123. Well, that was back then. Well, that's right now. You have the ability to have promised years to you. And if we are walking in our health and we're making the choices that bring us life and life more abundantly that we're promised, and instead of settling on the other side of we're settling for the unpromised, we're settling for death and destruction of ourselves and our body, then yeah, no, probably not for you. But sadly, then it's probably not for your generations either. So let's step up and cross over. Let's grab it. I don't care how old we are. Let's go grab it. It's not too late. I told you, my friend, man, she's 60 and she's learning how to swim. And then we're told, the Holy One tells them, when you get where you're going to go, I want you to drive everything out. The people, the idols. I want you to demolish the high places. All the things. Have you arrived? Have you arrived? Do you feel like you're walking in where you're supposed to be? You've arrived in the promise. You feel like you're in a place where he has you, where you're supposed to be. And have you destroyed the high places of those that were there before you? That's hard sometimes, especially if you're walking into a ministry and you've taken something over, and you need to ask, what needs to be wiped out? What high places have been built here? What idols have been erected? What people need to go? Because they will influence your family. They will influence the ministry. They will influence the promise. And they have to go. And he is so gracious and good. He will show you who and how every single time. Will it be easy? No. But it'll be simple, and he'll be with you. As long as you cross the river and you come over to the promise and you don't stay on your side, he will be with you. He says, if you don't drive them out, whoever remains will become barbs in your eyes and thorns in your side. Have you ever had an eyelash in your eye? I mean, good Lord. I'm like all day long just because I have an eyelash in my eye. Can't get it. It's turned. It's like flipping the wrong way and irritating, right? Or you get a splinter that you just can't get out. He said it's going to be an irritant. It will not kill you, right? Well, it says eventually it will, but it will drive you crazy. It will drive you crazy. But you know what's more important to me when I was writing my notes on this is, yes, it's crazy. Yes, it's going to kill you eventually if you don't get rid of it. But the most important thing to me today, it will distract you. It will be a distraction. There will be, if you're not getting rid of those things, those high places, the idols, people, the things that were there need to come down, they will be a distraction. Whether it's tiny, it will grow in the distraction process, right? And then he says, what I intended to do to them, then I'm going to do to you. You are the company you keep. And I'm going to say, this is one of the times, this is your weed to pull. It's your weed to pull. And you need to ask him, which ones of these are my weeds to pull? Okay, hopping on. Let's jump through all this. I'm not going to get super deep. Those of you who hang out with me on Fridays, and Rebecca and I will be hopping back into this again. I want you to hear the Levites get parsonages. They get their allotments. They get housing allowances. I love that, because then they can focus on the work that God's intended them to do. Thank you for all of you who support your ministers and your ministries. Support those and donate to help them be able to focus. I'm seeing my friend Jen over here. If you're focusing to come home, you're focusing to the television network, that you're focusing to, you're seeding into those places. What that does, it allows, if you're seeding into the Rooted Cafe, if you're seeding in that, it allows people like me and Jen and my friends that are all in ministry. We're in Levitical slots. It allows us to have housing allowances. It allows us to do things so that we can actually not have to work a bunch of other jobs, so that we can actually focus on what we're here to focus on. Your ministers at your churches, give. Thank you for those that you already do it, so that they aren't distracted and they can be super focused and hear from him and be able to help guide and lead you as your shepherd. We go into now these towns, and the town is called these cities of refuge, and we're in 35:14. The Miklat. I'm not going to dip into the Hebrew. We don't have time today. The root of that word, though, is kalat. And I'll let you spend some time in that word in Hebrew. Go through each letter, see the hieroglyphic of it. What does this town really mean? The original word, the Miklat, it does mean an asylum, right? A place where you can bring in refugees. It's an asylum. The root of the word, which, if we're doing our due diligence, we're going to go to the root of this word. It means to contract, to draw together. This is the Hebraic word meaning of it, not the Greek meaning of it. To receive a fugitive to oneself, to bring in and protect, right? These are for the children of Israel and the outsider and the visitor. It's for anyone who kills somebody by accident. This is like, how often does this happen? I don't know. I mean, it's ancient Near East, probably more times than we think about. Who accidentally kills people? It happens. It's going to happen. So here when you get there, you're going to set up these towns to help them out. It's a big differentiation is listed here for us between murder and an accident. It's not like, oops, I was trying to hit him with this knife because I was mad and I accidentally killed him. Yeah, that's murder. Oops, I actually took this big old rock and threw it at him because I was mad and it hit him in the head and he accidentally died. No, that's murder. You know better. You're taught when you're little, don't throw things in the house. You're going to put an eye out. That would be an accident. But if you're maliciously throwing something at them to hurt them and they die, that's murder. But if something happens and you accidentally kill them, it's not out of this hostility. What happens is these towns are put together so there was a place that you can go to protect you from the avenger. The manslayer, we'll call it the manslayer, can go and be protected from the avenger. So a family member is going to avenge their family member's death, but because it was an accident, you can now stay in this city and you can stay there and be protected. And that avenger can't hurt you while you're there. Now, if you leave and you're like out traveling, fair game. And the avenger's not going to get in trouble for killing you. There has been a way made for you to be protected. And if you choose to go out and, lollygag and whatever, do whatever, you're not under the protection. Kind of like remember when you're a kid, you have to come home at a certain time. When you live under the roof and you follow the rules, you have protection of your dad, right? So how long do you have to stay there? Is there like a set time? How long does a person have to stay under this situation? Does he stay there until like the avenger dies? The family member dies? No. We're told exactly how long you have to stay there. You stay there until the death of the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. The one, it specifically says, anointed with oil, holy oil. His death, the Kohen Gadol's death, sets the captives free. So anyone inside there, can you imagine every time there's a turnover of the high priest that he dies, guess what happens? Everyone in those cities then are set free. And then they would fill up again until the next high priest dies. And then they're all set free. And it says very specifically, you don't receive a ransom for someone to let them out of the city of refuge early. So I can't be like, hey, listen, I got a family, got a bunch of stuff going on. I will pay your family that accidentally killed your brother. I will pay you guys $1 million to let me out of here, and you guys aren't going to come after me, but I'm going to pay. You're not allowed to do that. You have to go. There is a consequence for accidentally killing someone. Because it says if you're not allowed to do that, death is the ransom. It's the only ransom. Money can't do it. The only thing that can get you out of the city of refuge, the only place that can get you out of that place that is to draw you together that receives the fugitives, where the captive has to stay, the only thing that can get you out, is death. It's the only thing that will set the captive free. Death is that ransom. It's a life for a life. And it tells us very specifically that if you do anything other than that, it actually pollutes the land. When murder happens, blood is shed on the land. It defiles the land. It says, if you do it to that, you defile me, because I live here with you. Do you remember Cain and Abel? Do you remember the blood was spilled? Remember it cried out? Don't defile the land where you live, because I live there with you. Now, who's your high priest? Who's your high priest? Everyone yelling it? I can't hear you. Yell louder. Are your kids in the car? Are you guys all yelling? Yeshua, Jesus. He is your Messiah. How do we get back to Eden? Is this world kind of our city of our refuge? Are you living in a situation of refuge because he's kind of protecting you because there's things you've done by accident? You've caused murder. You've caused things in your life. We live in cities of refuge right now, don't we? We're heard in Torah we hear that Yeshua, I should say, we hear in the Gospels telling us that he broke the law of sin and death. It wasn't about Torah. He wasn't abolishing or breaking Torah. Oh my gosh, he says, heaven forbid, right? He came to fulfill it, not abolish it. When he's talking about the law of sin and death, that law of sin and death was not a reference to Torah. The law of sin and death, this is one of those examples that when this happens, you have to die. And he's saying, no, I am a life. I'm going to take my life so that you now don't have to die for your sin. Instead, I'm going to die for your sin. That's what that means. I'm going to be the one who dies. I want you to all go in. And if you guys haven't got the book from Dr. Robin Gould, read her book on divorce and remarriage in the Bible. It'll be great for you. It'll set you free if you've been divorced or remarried, or if you have friends or family, give it to them. But more importantly, learning about it's a small little book, learning about the law of the husband and about getting remarried and about God divorcing Israel, and the husband has to die before it can remarry. It's amazing. And it's a beautiful story of redemption. It's the beautiful I mean, it's such a great story of the gospel, but isn't this also a great story of the gospel? Our high priest died so that we're set free. So we can return to Eden, so we can have everlasting life, so we can now approach him and we can walk with him. What happens when they're set free? They get to go back to their families. They get to actually, more importantly, they get to go into the tabernacle or the temple, and they get to serve in the temple. They get to, bringing in their approaches. They get to come in and be in the presence of the Holy One. They get to do that again. Why? Because the high priest died, and they can have life, an abundant life again. So I was made a note to myself, what would happen if I died before the priest died? Like, what would happen then? Well, I guess I was protected from the avenger, and I had to live away from my family, my inheritance, everything. I had to live from all of that. But my ultimate inheritance would be eternity with him, because I believe that, that's the reason when he returns, he sets the captives free, right? They're going to be set free. The dead in Christ will rise first. I don't know. I think you could go deeper in that. You could go sit in this for a little while and just really sit in it and ask the Holy Spirit to just guide you in all truth in this area. What does that mean to you? And how thankful are you that you don't have to live a life of separation, but you have the opportunity because of your high priest who paid the price for you and died early, not of old age, so that you could live. And then we round this all off with those great daughters of Zelophehad. Zelophehad, you gotta say that 3 times. They're mentioned in the end again. Go girls, right? Comes back around and clarifying that marrying outside of the tribe, the land is going to go back to the tribe to maintain the integrity of the inheritance of the tribe. These daughters' names, I love that they're listed here for all eternity. They're right there for us all the time. We have Malah, Zerza, Tirzah, Hagla, Milcha, and Noah. They're all from the tribe of Manasseh. They're all listed. Their names are here. They're in, and all that's happening here is there's clarification that if one of these, if these women in these tribes, they had to clarify this, because of course they came back around and they're like, wait a minute. They don't want the inheritance to be mingled and distributed and fractured, right? We want it to stay, the integrity to stay. So clarifying this is if there's just a daughter left in a home, then we want that daughter to be able to, she can marry anybody she wants. And it says that she can marry whoever she wants. Nobody's saying in here, and it clearly says that, I think more than once, she can marry whoever she wants. But if she marries outside her tribe, marries another tribe, she then releases her land, goes back to the tribe, and it's divided up that way. Why? So it keeps the integrity with the tribe. I love that. I think that's grace. I think that is wisdom. I think that it's back to identity, keeping that identity stable. And I just want to encourage you. I want to encourage you today to tell your story. I want to encourage you to remember the promises that have been given to you. I want to encourage you to walk in the ways that he's called you to. I want to encourage you to share the story and your testimony. And be blessed today, because your high priest has set you free.
זה שיר פשוט, זה שיר קצר, אולי נשמע טיפה מוזר, אבל תדע, כי זו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך, והוא רואה, והוא שומע, ואכפת לו מכל דבר קטן. תדע לך שזו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך.
זה שיר פשוט, זה שיר קצר, אולי נשמע טיפה מוזר, אבל תדע, כי זו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך.
we are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hugie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.